Hey guys, welcome back to the House of Gouldians. Today's episode we're going to be looking at the French side of the Majestic Bloodline and specifically the pairings for this season. I'm going to show you the pair that we had paired up earlier, just again very briefly, just to refresh your memory, as we're going to name those two, Louis and Charlotte, as we needing to replace Louis and Charlotte from last season, not because they've died or anything, but because remember they gave us a single blue chick amongst the other in the clutch, which tells me that they both split for blue and therefore cannot be in our pure bloodline side of the show. So yeah, we've taken them out, we've given them new partners on the blue side of the project or mutation side project, and now we've replaced them with that pairing that we had done earlier on because of the hen coming into condition early. After that, we're going to be looking at the economics of a bird room, and it's something that I've suspected was an issue for a while, but I don't do the hobby because I'm trying to make money out of the birds. I'm not farming birds for money, and unfortunately there are guys that have got into the hobby with that in mind. Now a lot of the time those individuals, you'll find they'll stick it out for a year or two. Once they start being successful with the birds and breeding large numbers, they quickly realize, but hang on, they're breeding the numbers but it's still not making economic sense. So we're going to look at some of the economics, but a disclosure up front is that I've based it on my costs. Your costs might be different. Obviously every part of the world, how much you can sell a bird for is going to differ vastly, and also what your expenses on your cost of seed is and soft food and all that kind of thing. So this is just to stimulate the thought process so that you can maybe do the calculations on your side and see sort of where you at. So that's the idea sort of behind the education segment. All right, let's get into the show. So before we get to the Majestic side of it, I wanted to sort of do a general update in terms of the bird room. So as I mentioned in the introduction, our first pair that we had put up, you'll remember that the hen was in condition early. They've successfully hatched out a chick, and the chick is now, as of today, 7 days old. He is a little bit on the small side for ringing, so I'll probably only ring her day 10 opposed to day 8 when I would normally do it, but other than that there's nothing wrong with the little one. It's going to be interesting to see if it's the first point for the blackheads in terms of our little competition that we're going to be running this year, and I say that because even though they're raising the chick, I'd fostered one egg from that I'd found on the bottom of the cage of the red-headed pair. So that hen has also come into condition and she's laid 3 eggs subsequently. But the point is I took her egg and I put it under that particular pair. So they laid 6 eggs of their own. There's 6 eggs, as it happens, in the nest that aren't fertile, and that sometimes happens early in the season. The male doesn't mate properly with the hen, that kind of thing. So it is kind of typical for your first round, it can happen. But the problem is I don't know for sure, is that one that hatched the red-head, the egg that I put in, or is it one of the blackheads that happened to be fertile and the rest weren't, and the red-head was a dud? We don't know. So what I'm going to do is, fortunately it's an early egg, if you like, or early chick, so it'll definitely have started developing some head color before the end of the season, and then I can allocate it properly in terms of the points for our little competition that we're going to be having between the 3 lines of the Majestic Bloodline. Obviously they raised it, so they would get the points in terms of the number of chicks raised, but in terms of the number of redheads bred, if you like, so from a quantity perspective, that would fall on the redheaded side. So, but anyway, we'll get to that when the time comes. Let's not get involved too much in, or worry too much about that at this stage. Other movements in the bird room, what I think is a recessive pied pair, you'll remember that from the previous episode. I have given them a box. I put some grass in the box to start the nest, and then I put others in the cage. They haven't started adding to the nest just yet, but then that nest has only been on a day, so sometimes it takes them a couple of days to sort of get used to the idea and hey, let's breed. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, I'm not concerned about it at this stage. It's very, very, very early in the season. In fact, none of the other birds have got boxes yet. Like I said to you, I normally only start putting boxes on in February. But you'll see when I start showing you the birds, the hens that their beaks have started going dark have gone dark pretty quickly. And it's also the reason why I wanted to show you that pair one again of the French side of the Majestic, is that I'd said to you when I paired them up that I'd done so because the hen's beak was turning. Well, now you must see it's virtually black. So let's have a look at that and let's move on to the Majestic Bloodline. So here's the replacement for Louis and Charlotte. We did show them in the previous episode, but you can see how the hen's beak that I was referring to earlier, where they're going black. You can see this hen, her beak is literally almost completely black, or certainly dark charcoal. This pair is currently on a chick that's about 7 days old now, so I'll be ringing it shortly, and that's the first chick of the season, if you like. So that was that first pair that I paired up that I said she had come into condition despite the austerity period, and yeah, the result was that they've successfully bred. One thing with Louis' replacement, if you like, that you just saw, as I move around, hopefully you won't move away, you'll see that his beak is orange tipped, not red tipped. And basically all that means is that he is carrying the genes for orange headed. So if he had had a single copy of the red-headed gene, he would have been an orange head. That orange tip on the beak you only get if the bird is genetically an orange head, but non-visual because of the lack of red. So yeah, that's the scenario with the two of them. So Louis and Charlotte, which is the first of the black-headed pairs. Right. So this is the second pairing that we're looking at. The hen in this particular pairing is a very long bird, which is she's basically on the show standard in terms of length. She is, however, lacking a bit of fullness in the belly and breast area, so ideally I would like to pair her up with quite a robust cockbird. The cockbird that's with her at the moment is just one of the options that I'm considering. He is a first-year bird, so I don't particularly want to breed him this year. And he's not as robust as I would like in terms of that chest. So yeah, more than likely I will swap him out. I am a little bit limited on the black-headed cocks at this stage, so I am in the market for one or two birds. And if I get the right birds, then obviously I would rather breed her to a better cock if I can. Head size and shape-wise is not bad on the bird. It's not 100% of what I look for normally. I would generally like a bit of a fuller head, but not bad overall. So let's start with the positives on this particular bird. I particularly like the bright coloration on her. She's got a very nice dark grass green back, and then the purple is the brightest of the Majestic Bloodline black-headed birds. Some of the negatives, unfortunately she does have a bit of a smaller head. Her head's not as full as we need it to be. Coming back to her color though, you'll notice that the blue on the rump area of the bird has that sort of yellow edging on the tips of the feathers, which we're looking for, as I mentioned on the previous bird. And yeah, generally she's not a bad bird. She is missing a couple of feathers at the moment. That's through squabbling with other birds in the hen flight, not because there's anything wrong with her. And you'll notice how grey her beak's already gone, which is a good sign in terms of her coming into breeding condition. She was one of our best breeders last year. Last year I had her paired up with the yellow rump cock. This year I'm not pairing her up with him. I'm going to pair her up rather on the Majestic side, and yeah, we'll sort of decide from there where we're going to go with her. But yeah, she was a particularly good mom last year, and gave us a nice big group or clutch of chicks her first round. There was 5 of them in the nest, and yeah, so generally I've been very happy with her, and I think she'll make a good addition for the Majestic Bloodline, despite her having a couple of complications. So for the education side of things today, we said that we were going to discuss the money side of the birdroom. Discuss what it costs us to keep a pair of birds. So what I've done, I've gone and calculated the cost per kilo. I've then gone and weighed how much seed, for example, goes into a feeder like this. I know that a feeder like this typically lasts a pair about 7 days. Obviously some more, some less, so therefore I've averaged it to 1 of these a week per pair. The seed theoretically would normally go down quicker if you're feeding only seed when there's chicks in the cage. But bear in mind, we're also feeding egg food. We're also feeding vegetables during the breeding season. So therefore I haven't inflated the seed quantity for chicks. Okay, so that's something that you need to understand about the calculation that I'm about to discuss with you. I've used sort of flat figures on the basis that the additional feeding during the breeding season of egg food and vegetables will outweigh any kind of fluctuation on the seed on that side of things. I have included a vitamin every second week. So that normally you'll see, and you guys would have noticed it, that my drinkers sometimes have a yellow liquid in opposed to clean water, and that is a product called AV Boost, and that is a general vitamin supplement that has amino acids that I give the birds on week 2. So in other words, 1 week it's plain water, 1 week it's vitamin water. Okay. It's the only continuous supplement that I give the birds, and it just makes up for any lack of nutrition in the diet or something like that if I'm missing something. Sometimes, like at the moment in South Africa, we're out of stock on a lot of certain types of seed and that, so perhaps it's not as balanced as it normally would be, so therefore I compensate with a good general vitamin, and that's what the AV Boost is. Okay, so that's the next thing that you needed to note. Now let's move on to some actual hard numbers. Like I said in the introduction, I've based it on the costs in South Africa. This is going to differ vastly wherever you are in the world. But the idea behind today's show was to get you thinking about this, because it's quite important when you're deciding how big you're going to go into the hobby. You know, what is your purpose of getting into the hobby? And that's why I'm basically doing this, and we're going to summarize at the end once we've looked at the costs. Okay, so the vitamin supplement I was talking about is R31.92 per pair per year. So 2 birds for a year. That's what the cost works out to, based on current day pricing. Okay, so obviously if the prices go up, this would change, but I've taken the current prices on everything. My vegetable mix that I give the birds works out to R29.37 per pair per year. Remember, I don't give vegetables throughout the year, it's only during breeding season. And then I'll give it to them occasionally during, as in once a week, that kind of thing during maintenance, and then not at all during austerity. So I've based it on those numbers, and that's why it's come to that price. If you were giving it to them every single day of the year, you would be looking at more like about 65-70 rand, somewhere around there. Okay. Egg food, once again, only during the breeding season every day. During the maintenance season or period, I've worked it on twice a week on average. Okay, so that's 61.20. Okay, then the seed. Breeding diet, which is my full seed mix with the herbs, with everything else that I add to it. The total costing per pair, so based on the 7 days I said for 2 birds, it works out to R225.42, and that's for 6 months of the year. We then have our normal maintenance seed mix, which is a little bit cheaper. That works out to 185 Rand for the 5 months. And then the austerity works out to 22 Rand, 68 for the month. Okay, so 22 Rand 68 for austerity diet, which is the only thing they're getting during that time period. So what have I excluded from the costings? I've not taken the preventative treatment into account. So my deworming medicine, my demiting medicine, and my coccidia medicine. Okay, well, the Baycox in my particular case, but it differs where you are in the world. Okay, so those are the only medicines I really use in the bird room. I really shy away from antibiotics, so you'll very seldom see me use antibiotics. Last year I didn't use any at all. Occasionally I do use a product called Factor 5, but that would be more with the bluebirds, and it's just to sort of help them clear out any nasties just before they hatch their chicks. And then again, once the chicks have fledged and they've been out the nest for a day or two, I'll then give it a second dose. And it's just to try and rid them of any sort of potential problems, with the bluebirds in South Africa being a bit weak. Okay, so those are the exclusions, should I say. Sorry, my speech today seems to be a bit lacking, and no, I haven't been drinking. Anyway, so what is the grand total? Our cost per pair works out to 555 Rand for the year, excluding medications. What does that tell us? In terms of if you're trying to make money out of Gouldians, if you were only breeding green birds, in South Africa, the pet stores, most of them offer about 150 Rand a bird. You would need to be selling 4 birds roughly. I mean, obviously, give or take, but 4 birds on average, because you're going to have some pairs that don't produce as many in that. Just to basically cover your costs, because remember, I haven't taken into account those medicines, and I also haven't taken into account electricity. So now all of a sudden you can start thinking for yourself, but whoa, hang on. I'm not necessarily getting 4 chicks per pair, and that's before you've even made any profit. So why did I do this exercise? The point that I'm trying to get to is that you can understand why a lot of the breeders around the world focus on your mutations, whether it be the yellow rumps, the blues, whichever the case might be. And you can understand why the guys chase the money in terms of those mutations. So they trying to forever come up with something new. And the problem with that is, and that's where I'm going with this whole thing, is that we then neglect the wild type bird. Your normal purple breast, and that's why I put so much focus on the Majestic Bloodline, is that there's twofold. One, because it's mutation free, theoretically it's the stronger bird from an illness perspective, because it hasn't been inbred as much. The reality, it's getting to a point where you have to inbreed to keep it pure. So yeah, we're kind of losing a little bit of that. The other side of it, and that's more where I'm coming from on the whole thing, is that it's, for me, we have a responsibility as bird keepers to look after the original, the wild type, if you like, or classic, as Javier calls them. And that is why I've chosen as a breeder to dedicate half my bird room to your normals. And what I found interesting is that, like the lovebirds already, your normals, if it's a true pure normal, there's no sign of mutation in it, on a black mask, the price is starting to go way up compared to a gewone that has all sorts in it. The same is starting to happen with some of your other birds as well, because the mutations are taking over in the pet trade. You battling to find your original bird, and therefore the original bird is starting to go up in value. The Gouldians, we haven't quite cracked that yet, in that a couple of the guys are trying to breed the pure normals, but the reality is they're not getting the additional money for it. And the only way that you would get the additional money, I suppose, is if you could prove it's a pure normal. So you've kept very detailed records, and there's like a record of lineage or parentage, a pedigree in other words, that goes with the bird when you sell it, that you can prove that it's 3, 4, 5 generations of mutation free breeding. So it's something that I've chosen to focus on. From an economics perspective, though, you can understand why the guys would need or want to have mutations in their bird room. But the risk is that the more we focus on those, the more the original or classic bird is going to suffer. So yeah, that's just, I hope it's sort of been interesting to hear what it costs us in South Africa. To give you an idea of the difference in price on a blue, because they're so hard to keep alive till adulthood, when you do sell them, the guys are selling them typically from about R1,000. It used to be a lot more than that. When I first got involved with Gouldians, it was about 2,500. Some of the guys have found more success with them, so the prices dropped to about R1,000 a bird. Between 1,000 and 1,500. Obviously, the 1,500 would be your better quality. And please, those prices I gave you at 150 Rand a normal. That is for general quality, the kind of thing that you're going to end up selling to a pet shop. That is not your show quality that you would sell within a club. And we had an interesting discussion about that on the WhatsApp the other day. The guys were a little bit cross with me because I was saying that if you breed show quality and you prove yourself on the show bench, you can get more money for your birds. And you can think for yourself, it's like a racehorse. People are going to pay a lot more for a foal from a winning line of racehorses than they are going to pay for some horse that they see on the side of the road. Okay, it's the same with our birds. If you build a reputation on the show bench, and the only way to do that is to be part of a club and to partake in shows, you're then going to get a brand or build your brand in terms of quality. And then you will get a green bird that the pet shops will only pay 150 for, but now all of a sudden you can auction that bird and you could find yourself getting 1,000, 2,000. And I know that it's factual because we've had it where one of the club members, his bird won a derby show and then won the overall bigger show, where there was about 160, 170 birds on that particular show. That hen then went up on auction and she received 5,000 Rand for that on that particular auction. So versus 150 Rand. So you can understand that if you, based on that, if you on the show bench, you're active and you proving yourself and your birds are winning special awards and first tickets, and more particularly they're winning the shows itself or coming second and third, the guys are going to start paying attention to your birds. I'm talking club members now that want quality. And when I buy a green bird, I don't pay 150 Rand a bird, because if I was buying a bird that's only worth that, then it's not worth me putting into my flock. I'm spending a lot more than that buying the quality that I need. But the reverse is true. There's very few birds that I end up after a breeding season and I say that's only fit for a pet shop, I won't sell that to a club. All breeders will end up with a certain percentage of bad birds being bred. The genes just combined incorrectly, whatever the case might be. It doesn't matter how much of a champion breeder they are, you're going to have that. But the majority of my birds I can sell for more than that 150 Rand, because I've started to build up a reputation within my own club, through this channel, through the shows that I attend to. So the guys know that if they're wanting a bird from this bird room, they're going to probably end up paying more than 150 Rand for it. And that's where I'm going with today's episode, is that if you want to at least break even with your Gouldians and at least be able to cover the costs of owning them, you're going to need to consider being part of a club and consider being active on the show bench. Now that might not be for you, and maybe you just want to keep Gouldians and you're watching this channel because it interests you, you enjoy the genetics, and you're not worried about how much it's costing you. And that's fantastic if you're in that position. But if you are in a position where you're trying to at least break even in your birdroom, you're going to have to be part of a club. So yeah, that's all for today on the education side of it. And yeah, we'll see you in a couple of weeks' time.